Get ready, wine lovers, because today we're going in deep on Touriga Nacional.
Portugal's queen grape, you could say.
That's right. And this queen, well, let's just say she's got some stories
Oh, she
from
does.
near extinction. I mean, this grape almost disappeared.
Almost completely, yeah. It was the late 1800s. The phylloxera epidemic, it just ripped through Europe's vineyards.
Really decimated them.
Touriga Nacional hit hard. I mean, really hard.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a survivor, that's for sure.
A true comeback story. But what was it about this grape that made winemakers fight so hard to bring it back?
Well, for one thing, it's incredibly resilient. This grape, it can thrive in some really challenging conditions.
Yeah, I was reading about that. It's not afraid of a little struggle.
No, not at all. Poor soils, rocky soils, places where other grapes would just wither. Touriga Nacional digs in, pulls flavor from the earth itself, almost like it's got this, I don't know, an instinct or something.
So we're talking more than just a pretty name here. This queen's got grit.
She's got that in spades.
Mm.
And that resilience, it translates right into the glass. You get these wines, they're complex, robust, but there's an elegance there too. This depth of flavor, it's amazing.
It really is something special. I was reading about the tasting notes. Evocative is a good word.
You open up a bottle of Touriga Nacional, and right away, that wave of ripe black fruit just hits you.
Mm-hmm.
Blackberry, cassie, plum, even a hint of myrtle, which is really interesting.
Oh, wow.
It adds this savory character.
So it's not your typical fruit bomb?
Not at all. This is a wine. It unfolds slowly. It keeps you guessing.
Now, I do have to ask about this because I saw it mentioned and I thought, eucalyptus.
Yeah, eucalyptus. You'll get that sometimes, these subtle hints of it. Even mint.
Really?
It might sound strange, but it adds to that complexity. It's one of those things that makes Touriga Nacional so unique.
I'm intrigued.
You get those primary food aromas, but then as the wine ages, things get really interesting. Yeah, so you might start to notice hints of, leather, tobacco, even what some people call forest floor. It's a sign of how well these wines can age.
Forest floor, that sounds like a place I'd take a hike, not necessarily something I want in my wine. What does that even mean?
Think about those earthy forest floor notes as a testament to the wine's aging potential.
Yeah.
Like, it has time on its side.
Yeah.
It's evolved, developed this incredible complexity.
Okay, I'm starting to get it.
It's a good thing, trust me.
All right. So we've teased the nose. What about the actual sip? What are we in for?
Buckle up, because Touriga Nacional on the palate, it's a whole other experience. And those tannins we talked about, they're really going to come into play here.
All right, tannins. Now, for those of us who aren't, professional wine tasters, break it down for us.
Imagine, have you ever had really strong black tea?
Sure.
You get that dryness, almost a puckering sensation.
Oh, yeah.
That's tannins. They give the wine structure that backbone.
So they're the backbone of this queen, is that what you're saying?
You could say that. It's not just about being big and bold, though it's about balance.
Balance. Okay, I like it.
You've got that structure from the tannins, right?
Yeah.
But then there's this really vibrant acidity in Touriga Nacional that keeps it all lively.
Now, hold on. Acidity is good. I always thought that was what made you pucker up in a bad way.
Think of it like this. Acidity is like the high notes in a song. It lifts the wine, gives it this energy, and with those concentrated fruit flavors, you need acidity to cut through all that richness. It keeps things refreshing.
That actually makes a lot of sense. You're speaking my language.
Good, good. So we've got the structure, we've got the vibrancy.
It sounds like my kind of party.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, before we're sipping this perfectly balanced wine, someone has to grow these grapes, and Touriga Nacional, well, it can be a little bit demanding.
Yeah, it sounds like this queen has high standards.
Absolutely. It needs a specific climate to really thrive. Temperate, definitely. Plenty of sunshine.
A sunny disposition,
Yeah.
just like royalty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it also needs really good drainage and the right kind of soil. A lot of times, Touriga Nacional is grown in these really poor, rocky soils.
I was reading about that. It seems counterintuitive, right? You'd think a grape this complex would need rich soil, but it's almost like it thrives on the challenge, like you were saying earlier.
It does. But there's one thing it really doesn't like, and that's being crowded. Those vines, they need space to breathe.
That was the other thing I wanted to ask about. I remember reading something about that. Diseases.
Exactly. Touriga Nacional, it has these tight clusters of grapes, and the skin of the grapes is thin, which makes it really susceptible to fungal diseases. Mildew especially, and oidium.
Oh, no, not oidium.
It's a type of fungus. It creates this white, powdery coating on the grapes. Not good.
So all those beautiful pictures we see of vineyards, it's not just about aesthetics, it's about survival for these grapes.
Exactly. All those meticulous pruning techniques, the way the vines are trained, it's about airflow,
Mm.
making sure there's enough space between the grapes so those diseases can't take hold.
Wow. So they need protection from the elements, but not too much.
You got it. It's a real balancing act.
That's fascinating. So we've talked about Portugal, obviously, the Queen's homeland.
Her Majesty's home turf, you could say.
But it sounds like this grape isn't content to just rule over one country.
Well, you know what they say about Touriga National. World domination is the only option.
Okay, I'm officially intrigued. Where else is this grape making its mark?
Get ready for a whirlwind tour because we're talking Brazil, South Africa, Australia, even California is getting in on the action.
Wow, California, that's pretty far from Portugal.
Yeah.
So how does this grape, so tied to its terroir, how does it express itself in these completely different climates and soils?
That's what makes it so interesting, right? It's like Touriga National takes on the personality of its surroundings. You'll still get those core characteristics, but the terroir, it always adds its own twist. Like in those warmer climates, I think Australia, California, you
Yeah.
tend to get these bolder, riper flavors. Those berries are almost jammy.
Yeah. Interesting. So a Touriga Nacional from, say, California is going to have a different vibe than one from Portugal.
Absolutely. And remember those eucalyptus notes we were talking about. They can be even more pronounced in those warmer climates.
I am taking notes. All right, what about a place like South Africa?
South Africa is interesting because they have a Mediterranean climate very similar to parts of Portugal, actually.
Mm.
So you still get those really elegant, balanced wines, beautiful interplay between the fruit and the acidity and the tannins.
And South America?
Brazil, they've really embraced Touriga National. They've got these amazing, cooler, higher altitude regions that are just ideal for this grape.
It's like a choose your own adventure with this grape.
Exactly. You want to experience all the different expressions. Touriga National is the grape for you.
Well, you've definitely got me ready to start my own tasting tour. But before I get too carried away, there is one important thing we haven't discussed yet.
And what would that be?
I think it's time to talk about food pairings. When I think about a wine this bold, this complex, I'm thinking we need to bring in some serious food to stand up to it.
Oh, you are speaking my language now. Touriga Nacional does not disappoint in the food pairing department. Those robust tannins are practically begging for a perfectly grilled steak.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. But it can't just be red meat, right?
Oh, absolutely not. Think about those earthy undertones in the wine, the hints of spice, the leather. Those flavors are a match made in heaven for game dishes like venison, duck, even wild boar.
Wow. Okay, we're going all out. All right, so we've got the carnivore corner covered. What about cheese? I'm a firm believer that most of life's problems can be solved with the right cheese pairing.
You and me both. And you're in luck because Touriga Nacional does not disappoint on the cheese front. This wine has the structure and the complexity to stand up to even the most pungent cheeses.
Okay, now you're speaking my language. Give me specifics. What kind of cheeses are we talking about here?
Aged Gouda, with those nutty caramel notes, would be a fantastic pairing. Manchego is another classic that sheep's milk cheese has a nice firmness and intensity that can stand up to the wine's tannins.
Love it.
And if you're feeling really adventurous,
Bring it on. I'm always up for a challenge.
try a well-aged cheddar. The sharpness of that cheese combined with the fruit and spice of a Touriga Nacional now, it's a revelation, trust me.
Okay, I am adding that to my list. You know, one of the things I love about this grape is how versatile it is. We've gone from hearty steaks to pungent cheese, and it can handle it all. But then I was doing some reading about some of the more unexpected pairings, and I have to say, some of these really surprised me.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. There were definitely some surprising combinations out there that really showcased Touriga National's range.
So tell me, what are some of these more unexpected pairings that really blew your mind?
Well, for starters, dark chocolate. I know it sounds a little out there, but hear me out. Touriga Nacional often has these earthy, almost cocoa-like notes, and those flavors compare beautifully with the bitterness of dark chocolate. It's all about finding those shared flavor profiles, you know.
Okay, I have to admit, I never would have thought of that.
And then there's mushrooms.
Mushrooms, like actual mushrooms.
Actual mushrooms. It sounds strange, but it really works.
Yeah.
Touriga Nacional often has this wonderful savory quality to it, and the earthy umami flavors that you find in certain mushrooms,
Okay, yeah.
they really resonate with the complexity of the wine. Think roasted portobello mushrooms, maybe with a sprinkle of herbs, a drizzle of olive oil. It's perfection.
I am definitely adding that to my must-try list.
This is what I love about wine discovering these unexpected pairings, realizing that some of the most delicious combinations are the ones you never would have thought of on your own.
Couldn't agree more. It's all about exploring, being willing to experiment,
Yeah.
and finding what delights your palate. Well said. It feels like we've only just scratched the surface of Touriga Nacional. It's got this rich history, this really complex personality, and then this bright future ahead of it.
It really does.
Yeah.
And that's part of what makes exploring wine so exciting.
Yeah.
There's always something new to learn, something that challenges your perceptions, something that leaves you wanting more.
Well, on that note, it has been an absolute pleasure diving deep into the world of Touriga Nacional with you today. We've journeyed through its history, we've uncovered its secrets, we've gotten a little bit hungry along the way.
The pleasure was all mine. Cheers to that.
Cheers! And to all of you listening out there, I say this the next time you find yourself reaching for a bottle of wine, I encourage you to try a Touriga Nacional. Pick a bottle from Portugal or branch out and explore one of the many other countries where this grape is making its mark. You just might discover your new favorite wine. All right, so picture this. You're at your favorite wine shop, bottle of Touriga Nacional in hand, ready to pick out the perfect food pairing. Where do we even begin?
Oh, the possibilities are endless. But let's start with a classic pairing that never disappoints Touriga Nacional with grilled or roasted red meats.
Okay, yeah, I was thinking along those lines. It just feels right? But tell me, why does that pairing work so well?
It all comes down to those tannins we've been talking about. They cut through the richness of the meat, creating this beautiful balance of flavor.
It's like they were made for each other.
Exactly. And those earthy, savory notes in the wine, they complement the char and smokiness you get from grilling. It's a match made in heaven. Now, if you really want to get adventurous,
Oh, I'm always up for an adventure, especially when it comes to food and wine.
you could try pairing Touriga Nacional with some cured meats and cheeses. Think prosciutto, salami, maybe nice aged Gouda.
Ooh, now we're talking. Cured meats and cheese, that's my kind of party.
Yeah.
But what makes that pairing work so well? Is it that same interplay between the tannins and those richer flavors?
It's partly that, but Touriga Nacional also has this incredible depth of flavor that can stand up to those strong, salty, savory notes in cured meats and aged cheeses.
So it's not just about cutting through the richness, it's about complementing those complex flavors.
Exactly. It's about creating this symphony of taste, this harmonious blend where the wine enhances the food and vice versa.
I like the way you think. Now, I have to ask about this because I'm always looking for an excuse to break out the good cheese. What are some other cheese pairings that work well with Touriga Nacional?
Well, we talked about aged Gouda, which is always a winner. Manchego is another fantastic option. That sheep's milk cheese has this nice firmness and a slightly nutty flavor that pairs well with Touriga Nacional's structure. And if you want to try something really special,
Hit me with it.
look for a cheese called Serra da Estrela.
Sarah Australia. Okay, I'm writing this down.
It's a Portuguese cheese, actually a sheep's milk cheese, with this incredibly rich, creamy texture, almost like a brie, but with a bit more bite. It's traditionally made in the Serra da Estrela Mountains, hence the name, and those sheep graze on these wild herbs and flowers that give the cheese this really unique flavor.
That sounds incredible. It's like a taste of Portugal right there on your cheese board.
It really is. And when you pair that cheese with a glass of Touriga Nacional, it's like bringing those two worlds together, this beautiful expression of Portuguese terroir.
That's making my mouth water. Okay, so we've covered the meats, we've talked about cheeses. What about some lighter fare? Are there any pairings that would work well with, say, fish or vegetarian dishes?
Now, that's where things get interesting. You have to remember, Touriga Nacional is a bold wine. It's got those tannins, it's got that structure.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't necessarily pair it with delicate white fish or something like that. But if you're having a heartier fish dish, like a grilled tuna steak, for example, or maybe a swordfish,
Okay.
Touriga Nacional can actually be a really interesting pairing. Those tannins will cut through the richness of the fish, and the wine's fruitiness will complement the smoky char from the grill.
So it's about finding that balance again.
Precisely. And don't be afraid to experiment with different herbs and spices in your cooking. Things like rosemary, thyme, even a touch of smoked paprika can really enhance the pairing.
Now, you mentioned vegetarian dishes. What about pairing Touriga Nacional with things like mushrooms or lentils, those earthier flavors?
You are speaking my language.
Yeah.
Those earthy umami flavors can be fantastic with Touriga Nacional. A lentil stew, for example, especially if it's got some richness from coconut milk or maybe a dollop of yogurt on top, that would be delicious.
I can see that.
Roasted vegetables are another great option, especially root vegetables like beets or parsnips. You get that sweetness from the roasting, and then the Touriga Nacional comes in with its fruitiness and its spice. It's a beautiful combination.
You've officially inspired me to get creative in the kitchen. Now, I know you're a wealth of knowledge when it comes to Touriga Nacional, so I have to ask, what is one unexpected pairing that you absolutely love? Something that might surprise our listeners.
Oh, that's a tough one. I've had so many amazing pairings over the years, but you know what? There's one that always stands out, and it's not for the faint of heart.
Okay, you've piqued my interest. Lay it on me.
Touriga National and black bean brownies.
Black bean brownies. Wait, hold on. I need to wrap my head around this. Are you serious right now?
I'm telling you, it's incredible. You got the fudgy richness of the brownies, the
What?
subtle sweetness, and then that little hint of salt that you sometimes get in a good brownie recipe.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then the Touriga Nacional comes in with its dark fruit, its spice, and it's like this explosion of flavor in your mouth. It shouldn't work, but it just does.
Okay, that is officially going on my must-try list.
Trust me, you won't regret it.
This is what I love about Touriga Nacional. It's a wine that keeps surprising you.
It really is. It's got this versatility, this ability to shine in so many different contexts that makes it truly special.
Well, I am thoroughly convinced. Touriga Nacional, you are officially the queen of my heart and my wine rack.
As it should be.
Now, we've talked about Touriga Nacional's past, its present, all these incredible ways to enjoy it, but I'm curious to look ahead now to the future of this grape. What does the future hold for Touriga Nacional?
That's a great question, and one that winemakers around the world are grappling with right now.
Yeah,
That's a great question, and one that winemakers around the world are grappling with right now.
because it's not all sunshine and roses in the vineyard, right? I mean, we're talking about a grape that's very specific about where it grows.
Exactly. And with climate change, those ideal growing conditions are becoming more and more challenging to maintain.
So what are winemakers doing about it? Are they just like crossing their fingers and hoping for the best?
Not at all. They're getting really creative, actually. I mean, for one thing, they're really embracing sustainable practices in the vineyard.
That makes sense. We hear a lot about sustainability these days.
It's not just a buzzword. It's about preserving the land for future generations. So you see a lot of winemakers moving away from harsh chemicals, using more natural methods for pest control.
Yeah, like letting the vines do their thing.
Exactly. And then on top of that, you have people experimenting with different clones of Touriga Nacional.
Okay, now we're getting technical. Clones. Break that down for me.
So a clone is basically a genetic copy of a plant. And some clones of Touriga Nacional are more resistant to disease or better suited to warmer temperatures.
So they're basically trying to future-proof the grape.
Exactly. They're finding ways to preserve the essence of Touriga Nacional while adapting to the changing climate. And it's not just about what's happening in the vineyard. Winemakers are also getting really innovative in the winery itself.
Like what? Give us the inside scoop.
Well, for example, they're experimenting with different fermentation techniques, different oak regimes.
Oh, that's a whole other conversation.
Oh yeah, we could do a whole deep dive just on oak. But basically, they're using those tools to fine-tune the wine, to enhance its natural characteristics, and to create these really expressive, complex wines that are true to the Touriga National grape.
It's really amazing to me how much thought and care goes into every single bottle of wine.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what makes Touriga Nacional so special. It's a grape that's steeped in tradition, but it's also incredibly dynamic. It's got this ability to adapt, to evolve, and I think that bodes well for its future.
I love that. A queen for the modern age.
Exactly. She's a survivor.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to raise a glass to Touriga Nacional. It's been incredible diving deep into the world of this truly captivating grape.
Cheers to that.
Cheers! And to everyone listening out there, we encourage you to seek out a bottle of Touriga Nacional and discover its magic for yourself. You just might find your new favorite wine. Until next time, happy tasting.